WVUA-FM, Tuscaloosa.
Good evening, folks. Welcome into the Student Section's college football wrap-up here on 90.7 The Capstone. Today is October 23rd, and we're live here from the University of Alabama. As always, I'm Nicholas Pursley, joined tonight by Joe Schatz. How we doing?
I'm good. Doing better than last week's show, that's for sure. Looking forward to getting into it a little bit more, but yeah.
And Adam Hambright.
Doing, a little bit better, I think, but my fiance thought it was very funny when we were leaving the stadium, and she's like, why are you more upset after this win than you were over the Tennessee loss? And, I got my reasons for it. We'll get into a little bit later.
Yeah, we're definitely going to get into that one. It's a lot lighter in the studio this week than it was last week. Maybe it's a sign of better times for the Crimson Tide. Anyway, we're going to get right into it this week. Alabama takes down Mississippi State 30-6 in a game that really wasn't all that close. Mississippi State scores on the final play of the game. But other than that, a dominant performance from the Crimson Tide. Let's just go ahead and get some first reactions to this game.
I guess I'll get the good news about this game now. We did win, 30-6. We didn't turn the ball over. We, greatly improved on penalties. We only had 3 penalties in this game, and only 1 until the last drive that Mississippi State had. I was a little upset in how the offense kind of operated, and I don't know if that was more of just trying to keep the plays basic going into the bye week with bigger games after it. Once we got up, because we were up 24-0 at halftime, we only scored 6 points in the second half. But overall, I liked how we were, more disciplined in this game. Hopefully, we can build on this and not have another letdown like last week.
Yeah, I just think for me, kind of my instant reaction about the game, like you said, Adam, was just the fact that Alabama was just way more disciplined. It was way cleaner of a game. I thought Bryce Young had another crazy game. He made a couple wild plays at the quarterback position. But, I think that the discipline for me, and then just kind of they did only score 6 points in the second half, but I felt like Alabama played pretty strong throughout the whole game. So just seeing that consistency again, I was pretty pleased with.
Yeah, it's hard not to be excited after this game. The defense looked worlds better than what we saw last week. Maybe part of that, Eli Ricks gets his first start for the Crimson Tide. Finally, people have been wondering where he was. He comes out and he just absolutely dominates. He only let up 1 pass.
Yeah, 10 targets, 1 reception.
Yeah, just a fantastic effort from him, and also a great game from Kool-Aid McKinstry, as we've gotten used to. But they looked much, much better. They really did a great job shutting down the air raid offense.
Yeah. One thing about that, last week against Tennessee, you saw the Tennessee offense. They didn't want to go against Kool-Aid. They only targeted him 1 time throughout the game. They tried to pick on, DeMarco Helms a lot, a little bit of Malachi Moore, and then Terrion Arnold over there. But in this game, Eli Ricks gets his first start, and I know he's had, some issues with the coaching staff, and that's why, early in the season, then I don't know if it just he wasn't performing in practice or something, but, this is, his first game, transferred from LSU in the offseason, first game starting, and then all of a sudden it's like, oh, Eli Ricks is in. We don't want to target him. They targeted Kool-Aid way more in this game than they did Eli Ricks, so maybe that'll be our new, starting corners, depending on how the coaches feel in the next couple of weeks. But I just thought it was very interesting how, this one person was added who we haven't really seen, at all this year. And immediately Mississippi State was like, we don't want to go against that guy.
Yeah. I thought the way that the way that those two guys, Ricks and McKinstry, played. Because Mississippi State, they're not as good as Tennessee, but an offense like that can give you troubles if you are a little, kind of like how Alabama's been playing. If you're undisciplined, got a lot of miscues, Mississippi State could scare you. They don't exactly maybe have the talent to match up with Alabama, but they definitely have a scheme to try and match up with them. And I just thought the way that the secondary in general, I mean, but especially Rick's in his first game, I thought they were fantastic and just an instant improvement than past weeks with Taron Arnold and a whole host of guys. Yeah,
for sure. One thing Saban said in his post-game press conference, he said that it looked like the guys were just having a lot more fun out there. There wasn't nearly as much anxiety. And I was really kind of puzzled by this. Saban talked a lot about how the guys seemed like they had a lot of anxiety out there against Tennessee. And I didn't really understand. I don't think that we've ever heard that before from an Alabama team.
I don't think we've ever heard it said, but it seems like every year, I think I mentioned last week how we've only had 2 undefeated seasons under Nick Saban at Alabama where we won the championship. We've had a couple where we were undefeated into the championship game, but only 2 complete undefeated seasons. And in those seasons where we do win a national championship, we usually have a loss like we did against Tennessee, like we did against Auburn 2017, or, there's always something like that happens. And they never have said anxiety, but you can kind of see it on the field, how they're playing a little bit more tight. And then after that first loss, it's almost like, the pressure's off almost. Like we don't have this weight on our shoulders of having to go undefeated, which, to us, it's kind of like, wouldn't you play more relaxed if you were like, if you're undefeated and you're like, I can lose a game and still make it in the playoff. But, I don't know, something about Alabama's teams, it's always after that loss, that's when they just come back, refocused, regroup, and they just play way more relaxed and, usually ride out the rest of the season.
Yeah, I mean, I think a lot of that has to do with the fact that, like you mentioned, there's only a couple of teams that have gone undefeated fully. And I think when you lose a game, I would imagine that, I think even Nick Saban said this in the Tennessee post-game press conference or in his talk or something about how, the goals aren't done. Like the season's not over. You can still go on and win a national championship. And I think that almost, like you said, Austin, probably relieves the players of, okay, we don't have the pressure really of going into, a bunch of games as, undefeated Alabama, with the weight of the world on their shoulders. Like they can kind of play freer in a sense and kind of get back to playing, better, hopefully. I mean, please.
Yeah, for sure. So one thing I definitely wanted to talked a little bit about the penalty situation for Alabama. Much improved in this game. Only 3 penalties for 30 yards.
We got 3 penalties for 20 yards. Would have been a little bit more, but we were a little too close for them to give them the full 15.
And one of those was the...
we had 1 penalty going into the last drive. And granted, if you looked at the game, the refs seemed to be letting them play a little bit more than what the refs in Tennessee were. Different crews, they had different styles of calling the game. Now, the last pass interference that they called, which put the ball, inside the 5-yard line, it was a little iffy. My main issue with that call was that on our drive, we're trying to run out the clock. It's 3rd down. We throw a pass play, and it looks like the defensive back just runs through our receiver, like way before the ball gets there. They don't call it. It's like, okay, the ref just wants to, go home. He just wants the game to be over. He's not going to call it. But then he calls 2 pass interferences against us, and, we end up allowing 6 points. It's the first time Mississippi State has scored in Tuscaloosa since 2016, I believe. I know it's been a while. I know Mississippi State just has not scored against us a whole lot. And, I really wanted the shutout, so I was upset with that. But then again, only 3 penalties after a week of having 17 called against us. Hopefully they can keep this going. I know it was at home. It does seem like when we play at home, we play a lot better. More disciplined, because like our 2 big penalty games we had, 15 against Texas, 17 against Tennessee, and I think we still had like 12 or so against Arkansas. So it seems like when we go on the road, it's a lot more of an issue, and we have 2 big road games coming up after the bye week. So hopefully we play a lot more like we did in this game, at least discipline-wise.
Yeah, one thing I wanted to say, first time they've scored in Tuscaloosa since 2014. You know who threw that pass?
Was that
Dak Prescott.
Dak Prescott. What a whirl.
Yeah. I think that, I mean, and it's kind of a bummer that they scored in this one, I guess. Yeah. I mean, just a real buzzkill at the end of the game. But, you know, I thought that, you know, overall, getting back onto the question of you know, the discipline and the penalties and stuff, it was kind of, I don't know, I think it was a very impressive turnaround almost, because a lot of the times penalties are based in like bad habits, or, you know, maybe if you're a cornerback you cover a wrong way, or if you're a receiver you're holding too long or something. But for that to significantly go down when when Alabama's been leading the nation in penalties for, I know, the last week, maybe even 2 weeks, but you know, I think that shows just major steps in, you know, at least, you know, I would imagine preparation and just kind of focus on playing your position right. So
yeah, I mean, it certainly was nice when you're not shooting yourself in the foot with a penalty on seemingly every single drive. Now, Alabama's offense still didn't look great. I don't want to really... They still didn't look great, but they at least weren't shooting themselves in the foot on every drive. And one thing I wanted to ask, do we think that this is something... Do we think that we fixed the problem, or, you know, like previous weeks, are we going to see this come back?
I'm still on the fence about it. I would love to say, you know, hey, we fixed it, but, you know, we thought that, you know, after the Texas game, you know, and then we had, you know, Louisiana Monroe and Vanderbilt, and like we were doing good. We weren't really committing that many penalties. The defense started forcing some turnovers, and then we had the same issues, you know. At Arkansas, you know, it was, you know, minuscule in comparison to Tennessee, but they were still there in Arkansas, still there for the Tennessee game. Now we have Mississippi State, and, you know, it looks good. The offense, you know, Bryce had probably one of his weakest games of the season. You know, he still had 249 yards, but 21 of 35, and, you know, I know we're nitpicking right there, but, you know, the offense did not look as good. But when you don't have the turnovers and you don't have the penalties, it looks a lot better. And when the defense doesn't give up, you know, 5 touchdowns to one guy. We won't really know if the problems are fixed until we get tested again on the road, which will be at LSU and then at Ole Miss, back-to-back weeks. Those are going to be 2 very difficult games. LSU just proved that, you know, you can't sleep on them. Like, I know they haven't looked like LSU of the past, but then, you know, Ole Miss goes there and there's a top 10 team and, you know, loses like 45-20 or something like that. So it'll be interesting to see. We have a bye week, you know, more time to prepare, more time to get more discipline, see who's going to play. And I don't know if you saw this late in the game, you know, once Bryce finally got taken out, we did see Tyler Harrell on the field for the first time all year. He did make 1 catch. So it looks like we might finally have a fully or a mostly healthy Alabama team. So that'll be interesting to see once we have these next 2 really tough games.
Yeah, I think that I'm with you, Adam. Like, I'm not ready to say that the issues are fixed because, you know, in reality, like we talked about, Alabama plays better at home than they, you know, miles better than they do on the road most of the time. And I think that, you know, we'll actually see if there's improvements when we get through that LSU and Ole Miss stretch and, you know, actually play, you know, a team where, you know, you can't always get the communication off and you can't always, you know, have maybe as clean of a pocket or a great release as you know, might want. And, you know, I think that, you know, I'm not quite ready to say that the issues are fixed, but to only, I mean, they've at least shown, you know, some improvement in it. You know, you just can't be committing 17 of them and giving up drives and, you know, that sort of thing. Because, you know, like you said, Adam, the team has shot itself in the foot so much, and when you're not giving the ball over, you can actually see maybe how clean of a game Alabama can have even when they're not playing necessarily good offense.
Yeah, and another thing about it, the offensive line seemed to have, you know, they were kind of letting more people by than usual, it seemed like, in the game. And if you look at our, you know, rushing performance. Jahmyr Gibbs had 10 carries for 37 yards when he had, before Tennessee, he had back-to-back, 150-yard games. So it was, definitely, we couldn't run the ball as much as we did in previous games, and I don't know if that's something that our offensive line just wasn't able to hold up to Mississippi State, which I really hope that's not the case for the teams we have coming up, but that'll be another thing to look at too.
Yeah, it was definitely concerning. So one final thing we wanted to bring up, obviously Jermaine Burton does end up playing in the game. The video came out on TikTok this week of it appeared to look like Jermaine Burton striking a Tennessee fan when he walked past. Saban said in the press conference he didn't think it was necessary to suspend him. He said, quote, "I don't know how many of you have ever been in a situation like that, but I talked to him," referring to Jermaine Burton. "He was scared. I was scared. Some of our other players were scared. I think you learn to respect other people because we have a responsibility to do that regardless of the circumstance that we're in." Should Jermaine Burton have been suspended for the game?
I think he should have been. It's a very bad look when you do have something like that, and everybody's jumping to conclusions early. But it's just a bad look when you don't really know all the facts, but then he's still allowed to play. I would have almost liked to see a suspension, mostly just kind of just tell everybody, hey, we're looking into it. He's not going to play until we make a real decision, which, Nick Saban seems like he has made the decision that he's going to play. But it might have just been a better look overall because, we always have this issue a lot of times with NFL players, with different types of domestic violence and stuff like that, where, it doesn't get taken as seriously as it should. And now if you have something like this in college, it's not really a good look for the program.
Yeah, I think he probably should have been suspended at least some, partially if you're not going to try to suspend him the full game, at least give him something as sort of a punishment. But, that my main thinking of it all is, when the video comes out and it looks really bad, Jermaine Burton is, it's like a bunch of people and he's like standing out, he's got the red helmet, the white jersey, this is, it's a bad look because he's kind of like representing the Alabama football team. So, if it's going to be that kind of look, it's a big problem for the program from an on the field and off the field vantage point. So yeah, I think he should have been suspended at least one game.
Yeah, I'll share that sentiment. At least one game, probably only one game. One thing that I did want to clear up was that it was reported before the game that he was in an anger management program, which Saban said he's just in counseling, not an anger management program. He was pretty heated about that being reported during the game. But, getting back to the topic, it's a tough look. I mean, I understand that, it's chaos down there on the field when they're rushing the field, but you have to hold yourself to a higher standard. You should know that you have to pretend like there's always going to be a camera on you everywhere you go. And it's really just unacceptable. You can't allow yourself to get caught in a situation like that because you're, not only potentially harming your future, but you're hurting the team as well and the school as a whole.
And I want some people that kind of look at it and, they might be looking at it just as an Alabama fan or different ways, but they might just be like, hey, he shouldn't be suspended. Like, it's not that big of a deal. But it's like, take yourself out of being an Alabama fan to be an Alabama player. What would you say if it was any other team? If it was a Tennessee player that did that to one of your people, like, you'd be livid and you'd be calling for the guy to never play football again. So, we're, sitting here saying, at least suspend him for one game. I know other people will probably just be like, let him play. But you have to kind of take yourself out of the fan mindset and just look at it as, a human mindset.
Yeah, for sure. Anyway, we're going to take a break. When we come back, we'll be talking the brand new AP poll as well as a crazy week in college football.
WVUA-FM, Tuscaloosa.
Welcome back into the College Football Wrap-Up Show here on 90.7 The Capstone. We've got a brand new AP poll after a crazy week in college football. Top 5, 6 remain the same, but we definitely have to talk about Clemson. A very close scare against Syracuse. DJ Uiagalelei goes to the bench in favor of backup Cade Klubnik late in the game. Clemson looked very, very, very bad at one point in this game. I think they had Uiagalelei had 2 interceptions. He had 2 in the first 7 games, and he had a fumble. So it was just a near disaster for DJ, but it does look like he is going to be the starter going forward.
Yeah, I think he has to be, just because Cade Klubnik didn't really do a whole lot. I mean, I know that they won the game and he was the quarterback when they turned it around, but I think that was mainly, Will Shipley had a career day running the ball. Maffa. He had a really good day on the ground, 94 yards, 18 carries. But I think it's kind of astonishing. But I think if I was a Syracuse fan and I woke up this morning, I would be very mad that we lost that game, which says something to not just how good Syracuse played, but just kind of how bad Clemson played. And Syracuse is just. They must be irate that they walked away from this game with a loss, because they had everything going their way.
Yeah, I mean, they had at one point a 21-7 lead, 21-10 lead going into the fourth quarter. Clemson scores 17 in the fourth to come away with the win. You had every opportunity available to you to win this game. You even had the ball going down as time was running out, and you just basically ran out of time. But, this was your chance to beat Clemson. They had, one of the worst games they've had in a while, probably the worst game this season. And then, if it's in Syracuse, if it's in the Dome, you might get, lucky. You might come away with that win, but you lost. Clemson, seems like they made the escape. They're going to go undefeated the rest of the year. Syracuse will just have another, really good season for them, but probably not, win their conference. And back to what you said about him being the quarterback going forward, you cannot erase the memory of his performance against Wake Forest, when he had 500 passing yards. He's still the best option for them. I don't know if they're going to have another game like this. I mean, they're kind of like Alabama, where you don't really expect this to happen, but every year it seems like they have one where it's kind of close or they lose. So it'll be interesting. But yeah, I thought Syracuse was going to win for the longest time. Clemson just came out on top.
Yeah, ESPN had them with 1:48 to go in the third quarter, an 85% chance to win the game.
I would be so mad.
Just completely flatline and fall apart. A very, very tough loss for Syracuse.
Sorry, not to cut you off, Nick, but I think the other thing going into who's going to start at quarterback is next week they have a game at Notre Dame. And I mean, I understand that Notre Dame might not be as good this year as they have been, but I don't think you want a true freshman's first start to go, on the road to Notre Dame in a game which Notre Dame's going to probably give you the best game they've played, because they kind of need to win it. And I don't know if you would want, like I said, a guy making his first career start in one of the most, intimidating atmospheres in college football.
Yeah, as Dabo said after the game that they are 100% on DJ. He said, as far as DJ's our starter, DJ's our leader, nothing's changed there. I think they just kind of brought him in as a way to spark, because DJ was really struggling.
Yeah. I do want to make the one correction. I said 500. It was only 371 against Wake Forest. So,
So continuing on, number 7 TCU jumps up a spot after another comeback win, a second week in a row, this time against Kansas State, 38-28. Max Duggan threw for 280 yards, 3 touchdowns. They take sole possession of first place in the Big 12. Huge win for the Horned Frogs.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting. I mean, we were talking about this before we went on the air, but just, like how far does TCU really have to keep going until they're considered a legitimate playoff team? Because this is a team that's, 7-0 on the season, 4-0 in the Big 12, and the Big 12 has been scary. I mean, I think this is the first week that someone has sole possession of first place in the Big 10, in the Big 12. Because it's just been tied at the top, or 3 or 4 teams have been in it. So I think that they have a couple of tough games left. They have Texas on the road and Baylor on the road back-to-back weeks. But I think TCU they're in a very good shot of being one of the, maybe not the big powerful teams that we think of. I think they have one of the best shots from maybe that second-tier teams to get into the playoff, just because they're a very talented team, and they got like 1 or 2 games, and that's what they got to get through.
Yeah, I mean, if you just look at the rest of their schedule, it's a very winnable schedule. I mean, they got to go to Texas and to Baylor back-to-back weeks in November, but the other 3 games, West Virginia, Texas Tech, Iowa State, I think we'd kind of be surprised if they did not win the Big 12 at this point.
Although it would make all the sense if they didn't.
I mean, it's been a crazy year. They were down 28-10 in this game, had to come back to win. They had to come back against Oklahoma State the week before, then they had to hold off Kansas. So it's been, they could have lost any one of those games, but they didn't. And now, looking at it with 5 games to go, that would be the team that you predict to win the conference. But it's been a crazy year. I think I've only seen 1 year crazier, than that being 2007. Well, if you're talking about the Big 12, 2008 was pretty crazy when they had the 3-way tie between Texas Tech, Texas, and Oklahoma. But I would pick this team to win the conference. Then it just comes down to, will they actually get in the playoff? A lot of that relies on how everybody else plays. We have seen TCU get left out before. It'll be crazy to see it happen again. That fan base will be livid. But, right now, if you look at the standings ahead of them, it might be tough for the committee to put them over a 1-loss Alabama or a 1-loss Georgia, Tennessee, even, Michigan, Ohio State. I think they've kind of made up their minds that those are the best teams, so they might have to have a little bit of help to get in, but I think they should win their conference.
Yeah, I mean, I have a bad feeling for TCU that we're headed right back to that same situation once again. But
I mean,
Sorry. Go ahead.
Sorry, I was just going to say that. I mean, it's interesting because we are talking about them climbing a couple of these tough teams, but Georgia, Tennessee play each other in the regular season. Ohio State, Michigan's going to play each other in the regular season. So one of 2 of those 4 teams is about to get a loss, and I think TCU, if they can run the table, and go into the championship week undefeated, I think they would have to be in prime position to make the playoff, because if they're an undefeated team, I think it would be hard to not put them in. Although, like you mentioned, the one year that they were kind of cut out from the playoffs, they went into the conference championship game, I think ranked 3rd, won it, and then dropped out or something. I think it was something weird like that.
Well, it was that was a year that they didn't have a Big 12 championship game.
Yeah, that's right.
They announced that them and Baylor, even though I think TCU had beaten Baylor that year, they both had 1 loss. They announced them as co-conference champions. And then they didn't get any team in. If they go undefeated, you should be able to say an undefeated team should get in. We don't know how the rest of the season is going to go. Anybody could lose, but if it comes down to where you already have, Alabama's already lost 1 game. If they won the SEC with 1 loss, and whoever they beat, whether it be Tennessee or Georgia, that gives them their first loss of the year. So then you have 2 SEC 1 losses, both being in the conference championship. Alabama has 1 loss but won the championship. Then you have an undefeated Ohio State or Michigan, and then an undefeated Clemson. You would see like I could see the argument to put TCU in over the one-loss non-SEC champion, but I know some people on the committee aren't going to see it that way and just see TCU as being in the Big 12 and that the SEC should get 2 teams in again, and then everybody's going to lose their mind that the SEC shouldn't have got 2 teams in. It'll be interesting to see. We got a long season to go.
Yeah, there's going to be a lot of mental gymnastics going on.
And like, let's not forget about Oregon, too, sitting there at number 8.
Yeah, we're about to get right into Oregon. Oregon up 2 spots to number 8 with a huge win over UCLA, 45-30. Bo Nix just... I said it at the beginning of the year. I said, don't count Bo Nix out after that rough start against literally the number 1 team in the country. Bo Nix goes 22 for 28 for 283 yards and 5 touchdowns.
Yeah, he's playing extremely well right now, really ever since that first game. And I heard a couple people talk about this right when he transferred, that they thought this was good for him playing what they perceive as weaker defenses in the Pac-12, which to some extent that's true. I mean, SEC defenses haven't looked the best this year. But when he faced, Georgia week 1, played a pretty bad game. They lost 48-3, but now they haven't lost since, and they just beat UCLA, who was ranked in the top 10. So he's making, he's moving up on the list, for himself, possibly for like the draft, maybe even like a dark horse for the Heisman. I won't go that far yet, but if he keeps playing like this, he's got a chance to move up.
Yeah, the big thing for him was that Georgia game was obviously pretty rough, like we talked about. He threw 2 picks in that game, and he's only thrown 1 since. And I think for a guy that came in to the season, people called him Bo Picks, and he would not stop turning the ball over. For a guy to do, to be able to not, only have 3 picks and 2 of them come in the first game against a really tough Georgia team, I mean, he's turned it around completely. Now, the other thing, too, that's helping him is he's only been sacked 1 time. And, I haven't exactly watched a ton of Oregon footage, but, I would imagine a lot of that has to do with the fact that his line, and Oregon normally has a good line. I would imagine his line has just been protecting him really well. And, I think I'm not going to go the Heisman route at all, but.
Well, look, I mean, you just said it. 2 interceptions, first game of the year, only 1 since. He just threw 5 touchdowns in this game.
8 rushing touchdowns.
Okay, yeah, so 8 rushing touchdowns. He just threw 5 touchdowns against UCLA. Let's look at the rest of the schedule.
God, he might win the Heisman.
At Cal, at Colorado, Washington, Utah will be tough, and at Oregon State, which is a rivalry. But tell me, you can't tell me that he won't go out and do the exact same thing he just did against UCLA against almost every single one of those teams on the rest of the schedule. They won't be talking.
He'll do that because he can do that against California. Obviously, California and Colorado are both pretty bad. And then the interesting test will, I think, honestly, Oregon State's probably a worse matchup for him than Utah, because Oregon State, if you remember when they played, I believe it was UCLA or USC. Caleb Williams got shut down, and that was USC ended up winning 17-14, but Caleb Williams only had 180 yards.
Well, they also had Addison, their great wide receiver at USC. He got hurt. He had to go out of the game.
Yeah, that is true.
And so,
that is true.
At California, at Colorado, Washington, and Utah at home, then at Oregon State will be maybe the toughest one because it is on the road, but that's the last game of the season. I'm just saying, if he keeps playing like he is, I mean, he's going to get talked about.
It would be hard if he, at least, if he keeps playing like this, if he doesn't at least get like an invite to New York. I mean, send him to, I forgot where they film it, but, send him to the studio, I think he would deserve it at a certain point.
And granted, like, this is coming from me, who was here. He was one of my biggest losers from week 1. I had Oregon as the biggest loser with Bo Nix because of how bad he played. And now I'm saying if he keeps playing like he is, he could get the invite.
It would probably be the biggest turnaround season to season I think I've ever seen.
Well, I think it's hilarious. You get him out from under the Auburn blanket, and he turns into the goat.
Yeah, Auburn fans must be like, the heck?
Who is this guy?
This guy's got 3 picks.
But also it almost seemed like his best game was always like against Alabama.
Yeah.
Like that was weird because like at Georgia he would always be terrible, and then he'd play Alabama, and he beat us twice. So it's like,
yeah, I mean,
do you know how mad Auburn fans would be if Bo Nix led Oregon into a college football playoff spot?
I mean, they could.
Like, I mean, I know some people are already expecting Brian Harsin to not come back next season, but if that happens,
that might be the tipping
that'll be the nail in the coffin for him.
Yeah.
Next up on our list, number 9, Oklahoma State up 2 spots after they defeat Texas 41-34. Texas just completely fell apart in this one. Yeah. Texas is not back, everyone. I have to inform you.
This is another game, kind of like the Syracuse-Clemson game, where if I was a Texas fan, I would just be so irate that we lost. And I mean, the problem, though, I guess, for Texas is that, like, it's becoming the norm because I believe they were up double digits against Texas Tech and Oklahoma State, and I think they've let a couple leads slip throughout the season, and yeah, I mean it was a bad game. Quinn Ewers had, he had like an okay game. The 3 picks really dragged him down.
Okay, might be pushing.
Hold on. I'd just like to mention this. 19 for 49.
Yeah, 319 yards, and
I mean 319 yards is good.
It's pretty
picks,
now.
3 picks.
The fact that he did that in 19 completions is almost incredible.
Yeah. I do have this one thing. I know you can't see this over the radio, but I found this meme earlier, and so a guy put Quinn Ewers after Oklahoma. And, it's got him celebrating. He's putting the hat on, and then it says versus Quinn Ewers after Oklahoma State. And tell him what you see.
It's the mugshot of the Tiger King.
Yeah.
I can't remember his name. What is his name?
Joe Exotic.
Yeah.
It's his mugshot, and it fits so well. They look very alike. I would be surprised if they're not related.
But I was told Texas is back.
Hey.
Wow.
Texas?
Could they still be back?
They could be.
Are they always back?
In theory, in theory, you have to define what back means. Because, let's say they win against Kansas State. Like, let's say they finish the season 3-1, which could very likely happen. If they, let's say they assume they lose to TCU. They would finish, what would that be, 8-4? Last season they were 5-7. You can at least see some improvement. Like, they're not obviously back to the Vince Young, early 2000s days, but not by any stretch. But
but this hurts us a little bit too. We beat them. It was by 1. Quinn Ewers was in the game, but he got hurt, and I know a bunch of people will say if he was still in the game, they probably win. With the way that they were playing early in the game, it is very possible. But then after that, their only other loss was in a game that he wasn't playing. And he comes back. They've been doing good, but then this one, like where he just plays bad. Like it obviously looks bad for Texas. It's bad that they lost, but as an Alabama fan, I'm kind of upset about it because I kind of wanted them to keep winning and make us look just a little bit better.
Yeah, as always, Alabama's wins start looking worse, and our upcoming opponents continue to look better and better. And boy, does LSU look pretty good right now. They have the biggest upset of the week. They beat Ole Miss 45-20. This one was not even close. I think I read that Ole Miss was up, and then LSU proceeded to score 42-3, I believe, from that point. I might be wrong.
I saw at one point it was 20-17. I didn't have the exact score before then. I have to see if I can
it was 2017 Ole Miss at halftime, and then it became LSU scored 28 unanswered points in the second half.
So you're correct. In the early second quarter, 17-3 Ole Miss. After that, 42-3 the rest of the game for LSU.
Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah, this game just kind of showed Ole Miss's deficiencies because they like Jaden Daniels, and I think he's like a pretty good quarterback. He played amazing. He ran for 121 yards, rushed for 3 touchdowns, threw for 2. That was that's like a Bo Nix at Oregon stat line. Just a remarkable game by the LSU quarterback.
So
I shouldn't, maybe not like remarkable, and that might not be the best word, but yeah, I think LSU, like you mentioned, a lot scarier of a game now.
We see them beat Ole Miss as if they were almost top 10 team. They beat them 45-20. Their next game, they get the bye week this week too. So their next game is against us. We both play each other in 2 weeks, both off the bye week, and then we have at Ole Miss after that. And would be very shocked if Ole Miss has another performance like this against us. I think that both these games we're going to get LSU, one of their best games of the year, and then Ole Miss, because it seems to always happen, especially on the road. I mean, I know we have more wins at LSU than LSU does in the whole series, but it's one of the toughest places to play no matter what, and I think it'll be very interesting the next 2 weeks.
Yeah, for sure. One thing I have to say, LSU got fined $250,000 for storming the field.
Because it's their third violation.
Yes.
How many times are you going to storm the field?
Dang, that's a lot.
But none against us. So.
Yeah. Anyway, we're going to take yet another break. When we come back, we'll have our predictions for next week and our biggest winners and losers from Week 8. This is College Football Wrap.
WVUA-FM, Tuscaloosa.
As we do every single week, we're going to get straight into our biggest winners and losers coming out of Week 8. So we'll start with you, Joe. Who was your biggest winner from Week 8?
Yeah, so my biggest winner for Week 8, we talked about them a little bit earlier, but Oregon getting a big win over UCLA. Obviously, Bo Nix played great. We talked about him as the clear Heisman favorite now. Yeah, I mean, I think this was a game that Oregon, in order for them to win their conference and potentially go to the playoff, they needed this win over a top 10 team. I think they showed how just strong they still are, even playing a good team. So Oregon's my biggest winner of the week.
Yeah, so for me, I got to go with South Carolina. They just beat Texas A&M, but now they are ranked again in the top 25, and I don't think anybody saw this coming before the season. They are now 5-2 with their 2 losses at Arkansas and against Georgia. The rest of the schedule, the next 3 games are winnable: Missouri, Vanderbilt, Florida. Then they have Tennessee and Clemson, so they're probably not going to win those games. But if they could finish out, going 8-4 this year, that'd be amazing for that program.
Yeah, so my biggest winner, just like last week, is going to be TCU. They had another comeback victory. They beat Kansas State, one of the best teams in the Big 12. They're 7-0. They have the solo lead in the Big 12. If they go undefeated, they have a serious chance to make the college football playoff, which would be just, I can't begin to tell you how big of an accomplishment that would be for this Horned Frogs football team. But we could also be heading back to another situation where they get left out again, which would just be extremely painful. So I hope that doesn't happen. I hope TCU can keep it up. But now we'll get into our biggest losers from this game.
Yeah, my biggest loser is the University of Miami. Not only have they had kind of a bad season with Mario Cristobal's first year, they're 3-4. They lost pretty badly to Middle Tennessee State, and they come into Duke and lose. I should say Duke came into Miami and won. Mainly the reason, normally Miami's just kind of irrelevant now. But the reason that they're my biggest loser is because they committed the most turnovers in a game by a Power 5 team since 2009. Not maybe the record Mario Cristobal wants to have under his belt, but this team, Tyler Van Dyke, their quarterback, went down, so they put in freshman Jake Garcia. He threw 3 picks, and then they fumbled the ball 5 times, which is a remarkable amount of fumbling. It is like, if you look at the stat sheet, it's like they have as many fumblers as they do, rushing, people with a rush attempt in the game. It was Jake Garcia lost 2 fumbles. He had, like I mentioned, combined with the 5 picks, 5 turnovers. And Miami just flat out got embarrassed by Duke at home. So yeah.
Yeah. So my biggest loser of the week is South Alabama. South Alabama lost Thursday to Troy. I know a lot of people listening probably don't know, but Troy and South Alabama is a big rivalry called the Battle for the Belt. They played every year since 2012. South Alabama is a newer football program. Troy has now won 5 in a row. This game was at South Alabama's campus. They had a sellout crowd, national TV, lost 10-6. Before this, their only loss was to UCLA, who coming into this weekend was in the top 10, and people were projecting South Alabama as the Group of 5 representative in the New Year's Six Bowls this year. Some people, not everybody, but that's kind of out the window now. So they're my biggest loser.
Yeah, so my biggest loser this week is Weber State. Now, this was kind of making the rounds on Twitter, but what happened is just unbelievable. You cannot make this up. Weber State broke the FCS record for most safeties in a single game, and all of them came the exact same way. Their long snapper was having one of the worst performances I've ever seen. I mean, these snaps are going 10, 15 yards by where they're supposed to, and he did it not once, not twice, not 3 times, but 4 times. On the last one, the punter just kicks it out of the back of the end zone. It's just, you cannot make it up. One of the tweets, Montana State football tweet said, Weber State snapped the ball properly, challenge 100% difficulty. You're just getting flamed by the opposing team, and they lost the game because of this. It was a very close game, I believe. Let's see. Trying to find the final score. 43-38. They lost the game on.
Weber State's also interesting because earlier in the season, I believe it was only the second week of the season, they beat Utah State 35-7.
Yeah, these are 2 good football teams. Weber State was 6-0 and Montana State was 6-1.
Yeah.
Like, these are not like bottom tier FCS programs.
Yeah, remarkable.
Pretty wild. So now we're going to get into one of our favorite segments every week where we predict games for the next week. So first up, I'll go over our records. I'm still in last place at 14-9, but we've been having a couple good weeks in a row now. Joe is in second at 16-7, and Adam still has the lead at 17-6. So the first game that we'll be predicting, number 19 Kentucky at number 3 Tennessee. Who we got?
I'm going to take Tennessee. I mean, I think they looked obviously. I mean, they looked impressive against UT Martin. They put up 52 points in the first half. But I just like Tennessee. I think Hendon Hooker's an incredible quarterback. He's playing really well right now, and I think they'll take care of the Wildcats.
Yeah, I'm taking Tennessee as well. If this game was this past weekend, right after that Alabama game, I probably would have leaned Kentucky. You heard a bunch of people in College Game Day talking about, UT Martin was the perfect opponent for them that week. So I'm taking Tennessee with this one, especially with that Georgia game coming up.
Yeah, you just have to take Tennessee here. I don't think they lose this game, although I will say it would make the college football playoff committee's job quite a bit easier if Tennessee did lose this game. But I still have to take Tennessee. Next up, we've got number 2 Ohio State at number 13 Penn State.
Yeah, I mean, this is like a game that everybody likes to hype up because Penn State beat them, I think, once in Penn State.
2016. I
think that's the only time James Franklin's beaten Ohio State. So this game's going to be hyped up to the maxes, but I don't think it's going to be good. Ohio State, I think, is just going to take care of Penn State.
See, this is interesting because this is Ohio State's only second road game of the season. Yeah, so, being on the road could be a little difficult for them, but I just don't see Ohio State losing this game. They just look too good. And earlier in the game this past weekend, they only had like a 16. They went down 7-3, and then 16-10 lead. And then next thing you know, you look up and it's like 54-10. So I'm taking Ohio State. I just think they got too much firepower for this one.
Yeah, they dismantled Iowa's defense. Yeah, the Buckeyes are the real deal. They've looked fantastic all throughout this year. Penn State, I don't think this is the week for you, so I'm going to take Ohio State. Next up, we've got number 9, Oklahoma State at number 22, Kansas State.
I think Oklahoma State's going to win. I think this is kind of a very classic Big 12 game this year. It's becoming, I don't think it's super easy to pick, but I think Oklahoma State and Spencer Sanders, their quarterback, I think they're just playing too well right now, coming off of another crazy win against Texas, so I think they'll take care of Kansas
State. This is what I find interesting. Joe every week is like, I like taking the home team in this situation. This week he's going with the road team. A little bit of change from him. I did
go Ohio State, though.
No, but hey, you're talking about the Big 12 games.
That's
all
true.
The Big 12 games, you've been taking the home teams. So with this one, I've taken Oklahoma State a lot. I like Oklahoma State, but they just had to come from behind and beat Texas. Kansas State had a 28-10 lead, lost to TCU. I'm taking the home team this week. Kansas State also had a cousin graduate from school there, so a little biased, but I'm going for the Wildcat.
Yeah, so I'm going to take Oklahoma State in this game. I'll mirror the same thing that Joe said. They've just looked really good this year, and I foresee that they are going to put the College Football Playoff Committee in another just very tough situation at the end of the year. This is a really good team, and they believe their only loss is to TCU, who is a serious contender. So this is a good Oklahoma State team. I've got them. And in our final game, we've got Florida at number 1, Georgia.
Yeah, I'm going to take Georgia. It's a big game. It's a Florida-Georgia game. It's held in Jacksonville, so it's a fun atmosphere. I think, is that the game that's called the world's largest outdoor cocktail party or something? Yep. So
great name.
They have fun, but Florida's not. So I think Georgia's going to smoke them.
Yeah, I got to go with Georgia in this one. I don't see Florida really being much of a problem for Georgia in this one.
Yeah, you kind of have to take Georgia. They're probably going to just dismantle Florida. They have a 92.8% chance to win this game. But it is interesting. I believe, let me look at Georgia's schedule real quick. This is really the best test that they've had since maybe Oregon, and we don't even know, if we replayed the Oregon-Georgia game today, does it go the exact same way? I highly doubt Oregon only puts up 3 points again. But who knows? So pretty good test for Georgia this week. We'll kind of get to see what they're really made of, especially before they have to take on number 3 Tennessee. So do we have any big upset picks for this week?
Mine's not like a huge upset. If you look at the point total, they're 13-point underdogs, but I am going back to my last official win. I wasn't able to make my pick this past weekend because we ran out of time. But this week, I'm going back with Colorado at home against Arizona State, 13-point underdogs. I'm taking Colorado in this one.
Yeah, for my upset pick, I'm going to go over to the Big Ten. And a game that's kind of interesting, Illinois at Nebraska. Illinois is favored by 7. They are the 17th in the country. But Nebraska, since firing Scott Frost, has been a respectable 2-2. Obviously, the first game that they played without Scott Frost, they got blown up by Oklahoma when Oklahoma was respectable. Then they beat Indiana by 14, kind of got past Rutgers by 1, then barely lost to Purdue this last weekend. I think at home in a big game, I think that stadium always sells out. I think Nebraska can beat Oklahoma.
Yeah, I like that one.
So I'm going to take a random shot in the dark here. UCLA lost this past week. Stanford goes to the Rose Bowl. Maybe there's a slight chance that they come away with the victory.
Well, I will give you that
UCLA.
UCLA probably will not have a good home field advantage in this game.
So who knows? Maybe we'll just see. Anyway, this has been the College Football Wrap-Up Show here on 90.7 The Capstone. We will see you guys at the same time next week. Yeah.
WVUA FM, Tuscaloosa.